Hello. Today I thought I'd talk about Dragonoid Baran and essentially what makes him so good. Because he recently got his Blossom, and that made him. I mean, I think he was already even before his Blossom. I think he was pretty good. He was a little bit outdated. We'd had some strong 50 weights released since him, but he still had some niche use, I think. But then his Blossom came out, and it's made him absolutely amazing, and I think inarguably the best 50 weight in the game right now. So I thought I'd start this off just with a quick overview of all his perks and abilities, just in case you don't know that. Um, these are his stats. I put him at max wake and full talent blossoming because I'll also put this. Let's put it at 40. Just for a realistic depiction of what you if you fight this guy in real time arena or guild or regular arena, you can probably expect it to be max wake. Since this is the second time round and they've got some pretty generous banners going on, there's a fair few people that actually do have him max awakened. So you can see he's got a lot of HP, that's a ton of HP. High attack, though not the highest. Fairly slow for modern units, but not the slowest. And then a decent amount of defense and low wisdom, but that doesn't matter because he has no spells that scale off wisdom. And also fairly low MP, which I'll touch on a bit more soon. 2 move, though that's not really true. He has 3 move, Awakening 1, and 50 weight. And if you want to see what changes his Talent Blossom made, as you can see, it added about 20 to each stat, but then for HP, added almost 200 to make him super bulky. If we look at his abilities, he's got a 4-range physical, fairly weak, but it's nice to have the range. He's got Dragonoid Fury, which is a multi-hit dash, which is nice for killing things through Immortal or breaking barriers, and or hitting multiple enemies at once, or hitting any enemy that's been snubbed. And it can really low defense. So he's got physical options and finally a spell option. And this is the one. This when I said he has a niche, or it still had a niche even before his Blossom. I think this was the niche. I think this is by far the best spell in the game. It was when he was released like a year ago, whenever that was. I think it's been made even better now due to his new Blossom. This is a fan shape spell that's unreflectable, deals damage proportionate to attack, and occasionally greatly lowers the self HP healing effect for 3 turns. So, if we think about other unreflectable spells that scale off attack, you've got Sorrow's Crimson Cuts and you've got Erdrick's Phoenix Descent. Both of those are elemental, which means that if an enemy heavy resists that, then they can't deal much damage to them at all. You never need to worry about that with this, since it's typeless. You're always going to be dealing the same damage to everything. It does miss out on Brilliant, but the base damage on this move is so high that doesn't really matter. The fact that scales of attack, if you want to compare it to other spells, scaling of attack I'd say is better just because it's far easier to buff attack than it is to buff wisdom and stuff generally. So if you give this guy an oomph turn 1, then this spell is going to become way more powerful, whereas you couldn't really give Zoma a double wisdom boost turn 1. I don't think there's any unit that can do that. And then also this lowering the self HP healing effect, this didn't get better due to the Blossom, but basically due to how the meta has changed since he released. This is now way stronger. If you think about some of the common meta units that we have right now, we've got Sorrow Manslayer. That's a unit that under 50% heals himself. Well, this would cut that in half. We've got Ashtaroth, who heals himself twice under 70%. This would cut that in half. You've got Solo that heals himself every time he attacks, and sometimes twice if he's using the special sword that heals on attack. That's going to be cut in half. You got some of Seraphy reactive heals, they can be cut in half, and just any healer in general obviously can have that cut in half, and that can take away an enemy sustain enough to the point where it can swing a match for you. And at the time it was released, there wasn't really that much self healing going on. But nowadays we have a lot of it, a lot of Dragon Scale, and a lot of reactive heals going on. So that's even better for that. And then also, it's unreflectable. So whilst most other spellcasters have to contend with spell reflect, like I say on that Sorrow Manslayer, who's extremely popular right now. A lot of spellcasters can't really touch him, but obviously Dragonoid Baran he can, and like Typeless. So this spell, like this move, is like I don't know if you watched my Zenlon video. I pretty much said that my issue with Zenlon was that the range was so good and the damage was basically impossible to mitigate outside of certain scenarios, and essentially that's the same here. The range obviously isn't as good. It's not a large fan, but it being unreflectable and typeless and hitting in a large fan, essentially there's, apart from like applying spell resistance and stuff, there's no real way to mitigate this damage. You just have to go for raw damage resistance. You can't use elemental resistances. You can't use a spell barrier. Snub is about the only thing that you can actually do to stop this thing, cleaving through your team. You have to snub either a cover tank or snub one of your units. And even if like I say, even if something is snubbed, he's not a sitting duck. He does still have physical attacks that aren't the strongest in the world, but it's better than doing nothing. So yeah, like I say, really Dora Aura, that's really the only thing worth talking about. But it's so amazing that it should be talked about. I think it's by far, I'd say it's probably the best move in the game. I think there is not one unit in the game that wouldn't trade their best move for this move. Maybe Zenithian Slash. Actually, yeah, maybe Zenithian Slash could be better, but other than that, I think this is absolutely insanely good. Let's move on to his perks. Dragon Knight, when attacked by enemy, heals 10% of user's max HP. Essentially, Dragon Scale, when combined with his HP, that's obviously makes him super tanky. And speaking of super tanky, Awakening 1, he gets +1 move and reduces damage by 20%. And this actually goes up to reduce damage by 30% with his Blossoming. So now you have a unit that's got 1400 base HP, heals 10% every time he's attacked, and takes 30% less damage by each hit. And then Combat Instincts restores 8% of max MP. Now, one of the things you'll notice about Dora is it is insanely expensive to cast, and his MP is not that high. The Blossoming did ease this a little bit. Obviously, it gave him more MP, and it made the spells less costly to cast. So at max weight, you can probably get 3, maybe squeeze 4 out with some equipment. But yeah, MP is still a bit of an issue for him. But with the amount of damage and the AoE that this hits in, really, you're probably going to be cleaning up most games with 3 Dora Auras if you get to cast all 3, or you're just going to be dying before that. But yeah, this helps to mitigate that. Restoring 8% usually means that you probably get, at max weight, you probably get 4 off if need be. And then Awakening 5, not that important. Rarely raises attack and defense for 1 turn. If it procs, it's nice. It'll buff Dora's damage, obviously, but only 20% chance. You can't really rely on that. If we come down to his Blossoming perks, he also gets this. Action Start, heals 15% of max HP. So essentially, you got a unit with 1400 base HP that takes 30% less damage from each hit, that heals 10% every time he is hit, and then when his action starts, he heals another 15%. So essentially, every time you hit this guy and don't kill him, and then his turn comes around again, he's healed a quarter of his health back. So you really need to, if you're going to kill this guy, you need to make sure you do it. You need to go all in, make sure he dies, because if you don't, he's going to be healing everything back off, essentially. He also got this, which is really big. I talked about his agility not being great before. Well, now on turn 1, he actually gets his agility raised. This obviously opens up turn flip potential. He can be slower than something turn 1, and then be faster than the turn after, so he can get 2 attacks back to back. And if you're getting hit with 2 Dora Auras back to back, odds are you're not going to be surviving that. And it also raises his physical and spell potency, which is just extra damage, which is always nice. He also gets a node that straight up buffs the Dora Aura damage by 20%, so it's getting even stronger that way. And so essentially what they did with this Blossom is they didn't really fix anything. They just said, right, this guy's tanky, this guy's Dora Aura is insane. Let's just go all in on that. Let's make Dora Aura even stronger, and let's make him even bulkier. Let's make him insanely difficult to kill. And all this for 50 weight. I would say his biggest drawback is that he is well, I'd say 2 actually, though the second one isn't as big. He's weak to confusion, which is a pretty bad weakness to have. If you confuse this guy, then you can ignore him for 2 turns, which is ideal. And also, he's Sis weak, which means he shares a weakness with Solo, who is also super popular right now. So that means that if the enemy brings Sis, then they can have a decent shot of cleaving through your team. But yeah, that's about it for the overview. I mean, maybe you already knew all this and didn't need to watch it, so my bad. Maybe you just skipped ahead anyway. But what I also wanted to do was compare him to the other typeless casters we have in the game, to see how he stacks up against them. So I have a PowerPoint for that, and I'll move it for there. So I thought a good way to show how powerful I believe Dragon Baran is to compare him to the other 2 strongest typeless casters we have, which is Zoma and Bahamut, in my opinion. And you may think, isn't that a bit unfair comparing a 50 weight to, two 65 weights? But after I've gone through the slideshow, hopefully you'll be able to understand why I think it's a fair comparison, and if anything, why it could be viewed as unfair to Zoma and Bahamut to have to compete with this guy. So first of all, if we take a look at the perks, weight, obviously I've covered that. Zoma 65 weight, Bahamut 65 weight, Dragon or Baran 50 weight. That's obviously better for Baran because it allows him to fit into more teams. If you do run him over the other two on your team, then you're freeing up weight to run something else. And on low weight weeks like 225 weeks, you can just build better, stronger teams essentially. Move, only 2 for Zoma, 3 for Bahamut for the first 3 turns, and 3 pretty much permanently for Dragon or Baran. Technically, he loses his move when he drops below 20%, but I'll explain how that's virtually impossible a bit later on. And move, you can't really view it in a vacuum because it depends on the moves that they have. They all essentially have the same vertical range turn 1. They can hit a unit 6 tiles down from them at the start of their turn. But generally having more move is a better thing. It allows you to position with more versatility. And Dragon or Baran essentially has that forever. Bahamut only has it 3 turns and Zoma doesn't have that. If we look at the HP, Zoma has 1200, Bahamut has 1400, and Dragon or Baran has 1300. So, Baran's slap bang in the middle of both of them. But what you've got to consider this with is the damage reduction. So whilst Dragon or Baran does have 100 HP less than Bahamut, and this is all assumed max awake by the way, he does have 30% damage reduction instead of 20%. So when you take that into consideration, essentially Dragon or Baran has more effective HP than Bahamut does, not by much, but he does. And then compared to Zoma, he has obviously just more HP because they have the same damage reduction and he has more HP. And if we look at their ability to heal, Zoma does not heal himself in any way unless you teach him mid-heal, which is actually fairly valid, but that's not a passive thing. Bahamut, he'll heal himself 50% when he gets knocked under 50%, which is a big chunk of healing, but again, it's situational. Sometimes you'll get hit to 60% and then one shot after that, and so you won't be able to take advantage of this. And then Dragon or Baran, he heals 10% every time he's hit, and he heals 50% at the start of his action, which is not as powerful of a heal as this, but it is reliable. Every time you're going to get hit, you're going to heal that 10%. Every time your action comes around, you're going to heal that 15%. So it has that reliability factor that's going to be most consistent throughout all your games. Bahamut's could proc, it couldn't. If it does proc, it's going to heal even more than Dragon or Baran does in a single turn. But if it doesn't, then it's not going to help you at all. And then if we look at their power boosts, Zoma buffs Wiz and spell potency on even turns until turn 10, so that starts on turn 2. Bahamut buffs spell tension on turns 1, 2, and 3, and then Dragon or Baran buffs agility and spell potency on odd turns until turn 9. So Zoma, since he gets no buff turn 1, I'd say that generally makes him a bit weaker for arena. Essentially, usually you want to clean up your arena games in 3 turns. For regular arena for max points, for guild battles for max points, and I'd say most real-time arena battles, usually decided in the first couple of turns. So Zoma's only going to get 1 stack of buffs for that, though it is a very strong buff. I've got a damage table coming up next. I'll show you how these buffs impact that. But yeah, I'd say Zoma's, it is a slow to get going, but they are very potent. So when they do come around, it's a huge buff in the damage. It's just, since he doesn't have any healing, is he going to survive long enough to get to use these buffs? I'd say that's probably the main issue. With Bahamut, we have essentially, this guy's built to do everything he needs to do in 3 turns. When his 3 turns are up, he loses his damage reduction, he loses his move up, and he does not buff his damage anymore. So this guy's built around 3 turns, but so if a match does go on longer than 3 turns, this guy's power drops off dramatically. And then we have Dragon or Baran. He buffs agility and spell potency, and agility is obviously super nice for all PvP because it gives you that turn flip potential. Essentially allows you to possibly go second on turn 1 and then first on turn 2, so you can get 2 back-to-back hits, which is always super important. It takes away enemy ability to reposition or heal and do anything like that. And he also buffs spell potency on odd turns, so that means turn 1 you can be getting a spell boost, a damage boost, just like Bahamut will, and that's going to continue. But unlike Bahamut, his is going to continue until turn 10. So if a fight does get extended, he's going to maintain those buffs and keep getting stronger over time, just like Zoma, but he's going to be getting his a turn earlier. So I'm not going to go there yet. But so I'd say Overall, Dragonite Baron, I'd say his perks are probably the best for PvP. Or at worst on par. I'd say Zomas are definitely the best for PvE. Having slow building buffs, that's fine for PvE, and his buffs are more significant than the other two on here. They've really increased the damage, but generally speaking, Dragonite Baron, he has that reliable healing. He has on par damage reduction with Zoma. He has more HP than Zoma. He has the versatility of the movement. He has the lower weight. Weight restrictions apply to all PvP modes essentially, and he has that agility up for the potential turn flipping. That's all really amazing, and that's before you even consider the spells themselves that they'll use, which I'll get to right now. So this is a damage comparison between the three, between Psycho Requiem, Mega Flare, and Aurora. First up, we have the range of the spells. Mega Flare is the best range of the spell, definitely hits the large fan, hits the most tiles. Then you have Aurora, which is 7 tiles in a fan. Then you have Psycho Requiem, which is 6 tiles, but 2 spaces away. And again, depending on the scenario, any one of these could be better, although Mega Flare's range essentially is always better than Aurora's. Psycho Requiem's, whilst it doesn't hit as many squares, since it hits squares from so far away, essentially you can cast this from a safer range, maybe from behind a cover tank, things like that. So based on range alone, Bahamut looks the best, but you also got to consider that Aurora is unreflectable, so that means the use cases for this go up a lot. Like I say, so as I said before, Sorrow Manslayer is very popular. If he is running around, then you don't have to worry about him, whereas Zoma and Bahamut do need to worry about that. They can hit him through that, or they have to take a big chunk of damage back onto themselves. If we look at the turn 1 damage, we have to see that actually Dragonite Baran, he hits the hardest on turn 1, which is, like I say, especially for real-time arena and things like that, that opening turn can be the most important turn. Sometimes games are decided in that first turn if you're able to wipe out a key unit, so having an initial damage be so good is definitely a really big deal. Zoma comes in second with that 919, and then Mega Flare from Bahamut 770. When turn 2 comes around, you'll notice that Zoma actually leaps into the lead by a decent amount. His damage goes up significantly. Mega Flare doesn't get that much stronger. Aurora stays the same because he gets no potency buffs on turn 2. But Zoma, like I said, Zoma turn 2, very powerful, but the thing is, you need to keep him alive for those first 2 turns so that he's able to get this off, and make sure that enemies aren't so close that he can actually go for this, because if you get blitzed by an enemy team and they're all up in your face, it's kind of difficult to find the space with 2 move to actually get the Psycho Requiem off. And then turn 3, no power boost for Zoma. Big power boost for Mega Flare. This actually goes up to being the strongest one because he gets the 100% spell tension on this turn. And then Aurora also gets a small boost. He gets another spell potency stack up to 1147. And turn 4, another massive leap up for Zoma to 1665. Mega Flare drops off dramatically. There's no more spell tension, so his damage really drops off. And Aurora still looking strong at 1147, but still nothing compared to Zoma really. And so you can see it really jumps around the turns about who's strongest. Turn 1 it was Aurora, turn 2 it was Psycho Requiem, turn 3 it was Mega Flare, and then turn 4 back to Psycho Requiem. But as again, you'll notice that Aurora, it's just it's incredibly consistent, and generally that's something that you should really value in PvP. There's a lot of RNG elements to PvP, but having things you can rely on is really nice. Like I say, he's got the reliable healing, and here he has really reliable damage. It starts off really strong. It doesn't stack, it doesn't grow like exponentially like Zoma's does. But, having those opening turns where the damage is big is super important, because like I say, most games are actually decided in those opening turns. Zoma, like I say, Zoma's the damage does rack up a lot over time, but he doesn't have the survivability that Dragonite Baran has, and he kind of requires to be played behind a cover tank, and he's less versatile with the movement. Like if you're running Zoma, essentially you're committing to a playstyle where you're sitting behind a cover tank and trying to do things and waiting for your power to build up over time. Whereas with Dragon Brand, I mean, you can do that. You can sit behind cover tanks, but you can also get aggressive with them turn one. And then Bahamut, he's generally like, he's sort of played like Zoma. You probably want him with a cover tank since he's weak to sleep, and you kind of want to base your whole game plan essentially around winning on turn 3 when he gets his spell tension up. And also some of these numbers, this is assumed like no leadership and everything that I put up here, but they can be different. I mean, if you're running Bahamut, usually you're going to be running him with leadership, because he has a nice leadership, plus 15% spell potency is nice for everyone that runs a spell, obviously. So you can add 15% to this, and he has his own weapon that can be rolled for 24% Mega Flare potency. So, that could add up to 40% potency on this, essentially. Dorora also has or Dragon Brand also has a weapon that can be rolled for Dorora potency, up to 21%, I think, so that can add a bunch of damage here. Or you can just run an attack weapon, obviously, to up this a lot. And then Zoma doesn't have his own weapon he can run, but he can run wisdom stuff, and his damage is already stacking super high on these even turns. But yeah, like I say, obviously all these units are pretty damn strong. They become stronger at different points, but I would say for PvP, generally being strongest turn 1 and being consistent through turns 1 to 4 is pretty important. So I'd favour Dorora slightly here, and also because, like I say, it's unreflectable. And has that self-healing effect down, which I think is, in today's meta is pretty important. And now I want to talk about, so since they're different weights, generally on a roster they're not competing for the same spot, except I'd say there's a bit of a caveat here with Dragonwood Baran, which I'll go over in a bit. But for 65 weight casters, essentially, if you wanted to run a Typeless caster of Bahamut and Zoma nowadays, you'd have to drop another 65 weight from your roster. And could you really justify dropping Solo, Ashtaroth, Zenlon, Sorrow, maybe even Erdrick for like these casters? I don't think so. I'd say most casters are in a fairly weak spot right now due to the spell reflect that's around with Sorrow, who is pretty much omnipresent. And so it's really difficult to justify it. But now, can you fit a 50 weight on your squad? I'd say that's much more viable, and I would say that Dragon O'Brien actually doesn't really compete with the other 50 weights for a spot on your team. He's actually a replacement for 65 weights. You could run this guy over Ashtaroth and see no real drop in your power. You could run this guy over Zenlon and not see any real drop in your power, because most 50 weights, aside from Greynar here, who is kind of a DPS, a 50 weight, most other 50 weights are utility that are there to enable your other units. You might run Juliante for the charm chance, you run Forest Dragon, Diamondstein for the cover, you run Seraphy for the reactive heals. There's not really any other 50 weight that I could even put here that would compare to the damage output that Baran is capable of. Greynar is about the only one with Xenon leadership, but he needs to be hitting brilliant to really compare to what Baran can do. Whereas Baran is just, he's just an absolute powerhouse. And as I said before, like when you're running, especially on low weight weeks, like 225 weeks, where you can't really run 265 weights, now you're able to run a 65 weight and Dragon O'Brien and still be as powerful. Instead of running Solo and Zenlon, you run Solo and Dragon O'Brien, you're still being pretty much as powerful. You're still hitting a massive AoE for 1k damage a turn, which is, it's just insane to do for a 50 weight. And so, the use cases for Dragon O'Brien over these other casters, over Zoma, over Bahamut, it just goes up exponentially. And I think you'll see that as time goes on. And so my closing thoughts. Dragon O'Brien is incredible value for a 50 weight. He has the stats, the damage, and the bulk on par with 65 weight units. This low weight allows for greater flexibility in team building, since you could run him in place of a 65 weight with no real power drop, and free up 15 weight for use elsewhere. You can turn an F rank into a C rank, turn a ghost into a jargon, things like that, or still be able to run him on 225 weeks over a 65 weight, and you see no real drop in your power. Dorora is arguably the best spell in the game, not mitigated by elemental resistance or spell reflect since it's unreflectable and typeless. It's incredibly hard in a large AoE, and can lower the healing effect. The healing effect can be devastating to units that rely on healing through passives or allies, of which there are many in the current meta. As I said before, Ashtaroth, Sorrow, Solo, even Zenlon with his Godly Breath and his Dragon Scale, they all heal a lot. His 30% damage reduction combined with the passive healing on hit and at action start make him very obnoxious to kill, almost always requiring multiple attacks to take down. Buffing agility and spell potency on odd turns allows him to fit into any playstyle. He can blitz and turn flip, or he can turtle up and gather spell potency boosts. Fuddle is the key weakness to exploit him if you are fighting him. I'd say, yeah, this Fuddle Scrolls are more valuable than they've ever been right now, and it's a pretty good idea to slot it somewhere on your team, just so you don't have to rely on only damage to kill Dragonoid Baran, because if he's being ran alongside Solo and Zenlon and Ashtaroth and things like that, like the amount of damage you need to output to wipe all that out is just insane. Ideally, you split up the team with some status and take things out one by one. And if you are running him yourself, it's nice to have a unit that has a defuddle that can go before him and cure that. So, he can go and cast Aura and cleave through the whole team. And, for PvE, he's whilst his heal down effect is actually pretty nice, the fact that it costs so much to cast, you're probably only going to get to cast 4 of these. And so a unit like Zoma is going to be far superior in PvE just for his sustain throughout a whole fight. And yeah, that's about everything. Thank you for watching.